Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whoever you love, we welcome you. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you.
Indeed, we welcome you, all of you. If any of you are new to the church or visiting, we encourage you to talk to other people in the church, help yourself to paraphernalia on the wall out in the foyer. Come into this place with your whole self. The parts that are raw and exposed, the part that is beaming with joy, the part that is seeking the truth, the new, the possibility. Come into this place, open your heart, lay down your burden, lift up your hope for something new to happen. Come into this place with fellow travelers in this journey, some faces new and others familiar, and all welcoming you here, now, to this moment. Come, let us worship together. At this point, I'd like to introduce Reverend Rachel Lawnberg, who will do announcements via video.
Hello, People's People. It's good to be with you. I am recording this on Friday afternoon because hopefully as the service begins, I am in my pajamas at home. Sunday off. Rest matters. So here are the announcements for today. It's a lot. Settle in. First, the church auction begins today after the service. If you're here in person, go out to the foyer, enjoy some cookies, and look at all of the offerings. We are trying something new. All the bidding is online, so you can access online bidding either on the church website or by scanning QR codes. We're all going to learn how to do something new, and there will be people on hand at church to help you if you need some help. There's some wonderful items for sale. A couple of my favorites that I've seen on the list are a church person who will help you develop your own training. They'll go with you to the gym and help you develop your own workout plan and training regime. And another person who writes theater reviews will write a rave review of your child's musical or theater production. What a delight that will be. So I invite you all to bid early and bid often to help make this a successful fundraiser for our church. Hard pivot to the realities of this moment. We know that this is a hard moment. We are all navigating the cruelty and chaos of our federal government. So some advice and then some invitations. So remember that this is not a sprint, it's a relay race. You need to pace yourself. You need to take breaks. You need to be connected to what gives you joy and sustenance and strength. I invite you to commit or recommit to spiritual practice, to moving your body, to sleeping. Trust that others will do some of the work that you cannot. And know that in the coming weeks and months and perhaps years here at the church, we will be sharing many invitations to live out love in this moment, ways you can use your time and talent and trust. And no one is expected to say yes to all of them. In fact, as your minister, I would be mad if you said yes to all of them, because that is not taking care of yourself. So I invite you to discern what you can do, be a good steward of your resources, including your time and attention, and know that I'm here for support and conversation as we make our way through this. Last week, I stood in the pulpit and talked to you all about how we can support some newly arrived refugees who lost their so much support, financial and otherwise, because of a recent executive order. First, thank you to all of you who stepped up. People have been giving folks rides, people have been giving money, people have been organizing. It has been beautiful to see. So an update there is an emergency grant was given by the Kalamazoo Community Foundation to help pay for some of the rent and utility expenses of those some of the newly arrived families, which is amazing. Less positive, another one of the refugee resettlement organizations in town stopped operations almost. They laid off 90% of their local workforce, I believe. And so we are still trying to figure out how we care for those families. A team of people have really come together to support one family from Afghanistan, and I've been helping them get to the grocery store and to job interviews and all of that. So thank you all. It's really a big deal. So keep up the good work. Another chance to keep up the good work. As I've been sitting in these meetings, almost always in basements, strategizing, one of the things that has been asked of us and others in the faith community is to raise money, to have money that is flexible and ready to go when people in our community need it. So this request has come specifically from El Concilio and the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center. And this week, the Board of Trustees created what we're calling the Resistance and Resilience Fund. Thank you, Barb Davis, for that naming. Isn't that beautiful? This is a new fund at our church designed to help people beyond our church community in times of crisis and uncertainty when money can make a big difference. So we will be dispersing funds in partnership with El Concilio, Michigan Immigrant Rights Center, out front, and some other community partners. And none of the money that comes into this fund or our refugee fund goes to church stuff. It's all about, we're just holding it to then send it out. So this exists. You can contribute on the church website, click the button for donate, and then Resilience and Resistance Fund, or by sending a note to the church with Resistance and Resilience in the name. And the first money in this account, in this fund, comes from an endowed fund. So people, our People's Church ancestors, gave money to the church with the specific mission of having it go beyond our community to do good work in the world. And what an act of trust that is for those folks to say, I don't know exactly what will be required, but I trust the future leadership of the church will know what the right way to spend this money is. They obviously didn't know exactly what we would be facing, but it is a gift to have several $1,000s every year that we spend outside of the church and to be able to direct it in this direction this year. What a gift. I also wanted to just remind everyone who is part of our church community that we have a fund called the Minister's Discretionary Fund that people have given to over the years that helps people's people in times of financial distress. So in the past, money from this fund has helped people avoid eviction, has helped people avoid medical debt, has helped people receive medical care, pay bills, all of those things that could have spiraled into something much worse, but we were able to fill in the gap. And there's actually quite a bit of money in that fund right now, so I just want to make sure people know that it's there and that you can ask for it. So if you need that help, talk to me. It is a gift to our church when you ask for help, because it helps us live into who we say we are when we can be generous with one another in this way. And we don't need that money sitting in our bank account. So we want to spend it, and then we'll let the church know if it gets low, but we're not there yet. I know this is so much. And in next weekend, we're going to have a special collection, and soon it's going to be stewardship. I just feel like I'm in the middle of a telethon right now. But we make our values real by organizing people and organizing money. So next weekend, we have several opportunities for joy. And as I tell you about them, I first want to read you a passage from Dan Savage. Dan Savage is a gay white man who writes a sex advice column. And these words were really meaningful to me when I saw them recently. So he wrote just in the last couple weeks, "The next 4 years are going to suck, but they'll suck worse if we let the news cycle and the man who dominates it drain the joy from our lives. We need to pay attention and we need to stay in the fight. Because of course we do. But we should spend as much time as we possibly can over the next 4 years with friends and lovers doing things that bring us joy. Anyone who tells you that making time for joy, however you define it, is a distraction or a betrayal or has no idea what they're talking about. During the darkest days of the AIDS crisis, we buried our friends in the morning, we protested in the afternoon, and we danced at night. The dance kept us in the fight because it was the dance we were fighting for. It didn't look like we were going to win then, and we did. It doesn't feel like we're going to win now, but we could. Keep fighting. Keep dancing." So with all that in mind, I hope that next Saturday night, you come to the dance at People's Church. It starts at 6 p.m. Please feel free to invite your people, right? This is I think ostensibly as a celebration for me being at the minister for 10 years, but I hope we know that it's for all of us. And I think everybody needs a dance party right about now. So please come. I think it will be fun, and I'm excited to see you. And then next Sunday morning, we're focusing the service on the Wizard of Oz and all of the various Wizard of Oz extended universe. So I encourage you, if it's been a little while, to maybe watch or read something from Wizard of Oz or The Wiz or Wicked, so you remember what they're about a little bit, and we can build from that common knowledge. It will be more meaningful to you if you remember who the Cowardly Lion is. I'm not expecting you to have done all of it. I haven't. but a bit, just so enough so you know the major plot points is going to make the service make more sense. I promise. And The Wizard of Oz is a nice story. Wow, this is a lot, isn't it? Thank you all for being the church in this moment and for showing up in all the ways you are showing up and taking breaks when you need to. Okay, on with the service.
Guys, embody your spirit to sing our opening song together. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love that arose in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love that arose in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love that arose in the winter time. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love that arose in the winter time.
And now I would very much like to invite Catherine up to help us light the chalice. Great. And for those who are on Zoom, if you would be so kind as to write in the chat box where you are lighting a chalice and your location, where. Great. Thank you. That would be wonderful. Pluralism. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible first search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. And John will now let us know where chalices are being lit elsewhere.
All right, we have a chalice lit in Portage, in Schoolcraft, Lawton, on 41st on a Half Street, in the Millwood neighborhood, on Munson Lake near Grand Junction, on Cherry Street in Kalamazoo, and on Westnedge Hill.
I'd love to invite As Unitarian Universalists, we gain wisdom from all the world's religious traditions and wisdom traditions around the whole world. And so today, our story comes from the West African country of Nigeria, which is a Yoruba story. And it's about, they have a whole pantheon of gods and goddesses they call orishas. And this is one about one of their trickster gods named Ishu. And he thought he was a pretty clever God, and he wanted to teach the people some lessons to help widen their perspective. So one day, Ishu decides to go to a village that has a street that walks right down the center of the town. And he walked down the street and just kind of minded his own business. And he had a hat on, and all the people noticed the trickster god with his hat on. And afterwards, they said, well, that was an interesting fellow. That was such an attractive red hat he was wearing. And the people on the other side of the road said, I don't know what you're talking about. That was a fine black hat that the god was wearing today. And the people started arguing. You don't know, are you colorblind? That was clearly a red hat. And the other people on the other side of the road said, I don't understand. That was so clearly a black hat. How can you not see what is right before your eyes? And the people argued so long that they ended up becoming enemies with the other half of their villagers on the other side of the road. And they built a tall wall right down the center of the road in the middle of their village. And they did not talk to each other anymore because they did not see things the same way. So a long time later, that trickster god decided to climb up onto the top of that wall, and he walked back across the road in the middle of the village. And all of a sudden, the people who saw the red hat and the people who saw the black hat were shocked. And right then, the children started laughing. That trickster god Ishu, he showed us. We thought that the hat was black, and they thought that the hat was red. But the hat was actually black on one side and red on the other side. That was so tricky. But the people hadn't talked to each other in such a long time because some people saw things this way and the other people saw things this way, and they were sure that their way was the one only right way, and that the other people were wrong. Have you ever had a time when you were told something or you saw something and you were sure you were right, but later on you discovered that maybe you misunderstood? Yeah, you've had that happen. Or you didn't maybe see the whole picture. You only saw one part of the picture. And when you understood the whole picture, you were like, oh, I didn't realize that. Well, that trickster god Ishu, he wanted people to understand that there's a bigger perspective. And sometimes we miss seeing the whole thing. And we dig our heels in knowing that we're right. And then when we don't talk to other people across the aisle, across the road, because we're sure we're right and they're wrong. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe in pluralism, and we believe that there's more than one path to truth. There's more than one way to see things, and there's a lot of nuance in the world. And a part of spiritual maturity is seeing the nuance. And the most important thing is remembering our values of how we want to be in the world. And even if somebody sees something completely different than us, we don't want to sacrifice our ability to be kind and compassionate and open-minded, and keep the lines of communication open so that we don't build a wall down the aisle where we don't talk to each other. Tell me about a time when somebody told you something and you were like, that is not true. Can you think of an example, Catherine?
Not really.
Not really? Yeah, Noah.
When my grandma said that there was a Chicago Bears game on Christmas, but there wasn't.
Yeah, sometimes the sports schedules are different. What about you?
Like my friend Annabeth said she has powers.
Oh, she has special powers. So when people tell us things that we don't think are true, how can we make sure that we're being kind and honest and upright? Always being true to ourselves and trying to offer grace to the world, especially when times are really hard. Yeah, Grace. Speaking of grace. Okay. All right. What do you got for me, Herschel?
My dad said that was a snowstorm, but there wasn't, and we need to go to our grandpa and grandpa's house.
Okay. All right. I think with that fine feedback, we are going to head off to our classes right now.
Say, shall we?
Love to guide you on your way, and may the joy of life surround you wherever you may go. Go forth in peace in search of wisdom, with love to guide you on your way, and may the joy of life surround you wherever you may go.
Well, in all of my welcoming words, I completely, utterly forgot to welcome our guest minister, Dr. Reverend Liz Candido, who is the minister at Kalamazoo College. People's people are a generous people. Some of you may know that late last year, one of our members needed a transplant of an organ. And another people's person came forward and gave that organ to him. That is the depth of generosity, and that is who we are. This is the moment to keep being generous. This offering will now be received. Please now join me in giving thanks. From the countless gifts we have been given, gifts of life and love and assistance, we bring these small portions to share in the works of love which none of us can accomplish alone. People's Church is a community that supports one another in good times and in bad. One of the ways that we do this is taking time during our service to share joys, sorrows, and milestones in our lives. If you have something you wish to share with our community, please come forward, place a stone in the bowl of water, speak briefly, and remember to tell us your name. If you're on Zoom, please type your joy or sorrow in the chat box, and John will read them later.
I invite you to join me in song from your seats. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole.
Our first reading today comes from an interview that Diana Eck, who is a Hinduism scholar and a religious researcher in the United States, that Diana Eck gave with Bill Moyers in the days just following 9/11. She said, "We have so long presumptively thought of ourselves as a Christian nation, a Judeo-Christian nation, a secular nation as well. But we've never really stepped up to the plate and said, now in the 20th and the early 21st century, we have to take seriously the religious freedom that is part of our Constitution. And religious freedom brings religious diversity. Now we have it. We have lots of it. Diversity itself is not pluralism. Pluralism requires that we engage with that diversity. We find ways to know one another because we can't live at such close quarters with one another without knowing more about one another than we do." And our second reading is from 1 Corinthians 12 through 20. This is from the Christian tradition, which is my tradition. "For just as the body is one and has many members, and all the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. For in the one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, Jews or Greeks, slaves or free, and we were all made to drink of one Spirit. Indeed, the body does not consist of one member, but of many. If the foot were to say, "Because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body," that would not make it any less a part of the body. And if the ear were to say, "Because I am not an eye, I do not belong to the body," that would not make it any less a part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the hearing be? If the whole body were the hearing, where would the sense of smell be? But as it is, God arranged the members in the body, each one of them as he chose. If all were a single member, where would the body be? As it is, there are many members, yet one body.
I invite you to rise and bow to your spirit. Find a comfortable singing position. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
So thank you. It's really good to be here with you. I was trying to figure out when the last time I was at People's Church was, and I'm pretty sure it's before I had children. And today I brought my 14-year-old with me. So it's been a few years, and maybe we'll see how today goes. Maybe it'll be another 14 years. Thank you. Reverend Rachel suggested to me that today might be a really good day to talk about pluralism. The youth are learning about it, and they're visiting places of worship in the greater Kalamazoo area, and it's a really good topic. Easy enough, I thought. As I was introduced, I am the chaplain at Kalamazoo College. I lead an interfaith student leaders organization. About a third of my job is devoted to pluralism, so I am literally paid to do this. And then I turned on the news, and I was confronted by the chaos and the cruelty of this political moment, and I remembered that absolutely nothing about pluralism is easy. In fact, given the outlawing of trans folk in the NCAA sports, the shutdown of charitable organizations, the outlawing of federal diversity and inclusion programs, it might even be dangerous to talk about pluralism right now. Every morning I wake up, I turn on the news, and I'm assaulted by the crisis in liberal democracy, and I feel frozen. I don't know what to do with all of the pain and the horror in this world. And that is exactly the time, maybe, that we should talk about pluralism. I'm a Christian pastor. I'm a Presbyterian minister by ordination. And my tradition affirms two things loudly over and over again. The first one is that I am not responsible to this political moment. I am responsible to God. And the second is, do not be afraid. I believe in the power of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I center interfaith work because God calls me to do it, and I hope that God might call you to it too. In this moment, I think it might be one of the most powerful tools that we have to move our world into a more just and more peaceful place. We live in this amazing moment in history. In the whole history of the entire world, there has never been a place as religiously diverse as the United States at this moment. For all of our failings, people come here because of our religious freedom, and they come here also for freedom from religion. This country has fostered the greatest diversity of worldviews in any place in time, and perhaps it's that grand diversity that's receiving so much pushback. Pluralism, though, is not diversity. Having lots of different types of people in a space is a wonderful gift, but it isn't until those folks actually start centering their differences that we have the opportunity to experience pluralism. In my experience, it's actually quite difficult to get people, diverse groups of people, together to talk about what makes them different, even when that's the thing they signed up to do. I lead an interfaith student leaders group on Wednesday nights, each night Wednesday of the school year. And when I get my interfaith student leaders together, especially in the fall when they're just getting to know each other, they will talk about almost anything other than what makes them different from one another. When I ask them to talk about their religious or spiritual paths, the conversation drifts to what they have in common. There's nothing wrong with that. Probably means that they're very kind people who want to build relationship. But it's not pluralism. Hindu scholar turned academic researcher Diana Eck defines pluralism as the energetic engagement with diversity. It isn't just diverse groups of people talking. It's diverse groups of people talking about what makes them different. And that's a whole other ballgame. Teaching students to be interfaith leaders requires them to learn about world religions and spiritual traditions through the practice of conversation, shared experience, and personal spiritual growth. Pluralism builds the capacity for peace by creating bonds through difference, not by ignoring it, but by putting those differences into context, and then allowing that context to build bridges without the expectation that we're all going to get to a place where we agree. It builds cultural capital through showing up and through making those relationships. It has the potential to overcome the really hard stuff when we get there. After a year of interfaith work, students report knowing who they are with greater depth because they've spent so much time talking with other people, thinking about other people's deepest commitments. It's helped clarify their own. I believe deeply that this is one of the only things that helps us overcome estrangement. When I watch the news, I see a world and I see a country hungry for differentiating, for conquering through power. And it makes me wonder, where did we go wrong? Frankly, I think there are some basic skills most Americans are lacking. You can teach this stuff. You can teach it in high school. You can help people gain interreligious skills like literacy. And that's what you're doing with your youth group here. Go visit other places, see how other people do it. You can teach some basics like modesty rules, like when to take off your shoes and when not to take off your shoes in someone else's space. Helps you be a better visitor when you show up. You could invite religious leaders and practitioners into your own space and ask questions respectfully, helping you get to know them in the way that they want to be understood. A decent educator can teach some respectful habits, can model dignity and respect, building the capacity for us to disagree, but to disagree peacefully. Then there are some harder skills, the ones that I hope I'm teaching, but that I'm never really sure that I do. I try very hard to help my students notice their own worldview, to notice the hidden assumptions that shape them, whatever invisible messages that they carry around inside themselves uncritically. The point, of course, is not to change their worldview, although sometimes that does happen, but instead to make them aware that none of us are sui generis, that we all come from certain communities that have certain shared values and certain assumptions. If you can know that about yourself, perhaps then you can have some sympathy for someone else who comes from a different community with different values and different assumptions. It can help us live with fewer judgments. A truly pluralistic worldview might teach us how to live in this very diverse world without having to judge who is better, who is more morally righteous, who deserves power. Now, one challenge that we have at Kalamazoo College is that we tend to lean politically and theologically quite to the left. Our most conservative students would likely be labeled moderates in the rest of the world. I'm guessing a similar thing is probably true of this congregation. I'm kidding, I know it's true because I've been your neighbor for the last 15 years. So I'm talking to my people here right now. Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk, famously said that in true dialogue, both sides must be willing to change. Interfaith work requires you to loosen your grip on truth, on certainty, on judgment, and to become vulnerable to the other. It requires you to hold out the possibility that you just might learn something. Now, this is where I have the potential to make you a little uncomfortable. I've had the opportunity over the last 20 years to observe myself and my students in interfaith work, and I've noticed some patterns. They're what I tend to think of as the sins of the right and the left, and they are flip sides of the exact same coin. For my more conservative students, there is the sin of certainty, knowing what is right and asserting it without a willingness to change. Sometimes that comes out in the form of proselytizing, trying to change others into your form of Christian, usually Christian, not always. But more often than not, it's actually much simpler than that. It's just a stubborn refusal to consider another viewpoint because you've already got God on your side, so you don't need to change. Such a belief is really dangerous. It can lead to justifying all sorts of terrible behaviors, from religious discrimination all the way up to genocide. When we believe that God hates all the same people we hate, agrees with all of our judgments, all sorts of terrible things can happen. And then there's the flip side of that coin, the political and the theological certainty of the left. Just as stubborn, it often comes out as protective with sort of a social justice gloss on it. Those other people oppress gay people or women or working class folks, so I don't actually need to consider their worldview as real or meaningful or earned. My more liberal dialoguers often come with a deep-seated belief in their own open-mindedness. And I find that so much harder to work with. My same people who would want desperately to build relationships, to show up and get to know somebody else, at the same time condemn Mormonism or Islam or whoever it is that they've interpreted to be oppressive. And while I can understand some of the critiques, of course, that doesn't change the fact that when you are sitting there silently judging someone, you are not engaging in a way that helps you know them in the way that they know themselves. Not really. There can be a certain self-satisfied certainty, a paternalism in liberal approaches to interfaith work that robs our more conservative counterparts of their full humanity. It is, despite the veneer, a refusal to learn or to be changed. And then in some ways, where I do my work actually makes it much harder. In higher ed, we try very hard to cultivate critical thinkers. And then I come along and I say, hey, students, just suspend that for a minute. Suspend that critical eye for just a moment. I want you to meet somebody else as an equal. I don't want you to critique them or their theology or their thoughts. I want you to just be with someone else as a human on a journey. I urge them to see relationship as relationship and not as transactional. I've noticed that this is the hardest when we're meeting with religious others who are the closest to whatever we are. Just like Jesus preaching against the Pharisees, we tend to hold the most disdain for those traditions that are most like ours. Students who would never dream of denigrating their Muslim peers will write a treatise on how their evangelical Christian neighbors suck. Somehow, the more like us we are, the bigger our judgments. Interfaith work is diversity work, and as such, it can be deeply uncomfortable. Pluralism centers our differences, and sometimes those differences matter. You can't talk about religion without talking about race and class and gender and sexuality. All of our identities are implicated, and power is always at play. When I ask you to suspend judgment on someone else, I could be asking you to suspend judgment on some of your most deeply held convictions. And some friends, some commitments are too deeply held, too close to the center of our humanity to suspend. One big caveat I carry into every interfaith space is that you should never be harmed in the process. There are moments when another person's worldview is too harmful and it has the potential to damage your humanity, and if that's the case, then you need to walk away. That's real. I try very hard not to create spaces where LGBTQ folks might be harmed in the room. I never would ask someone to step into that work, not unless they chose it themselves. And this is where being part of a community is actually essential. When you walk away, it's possible because you know that you have allies in that space, other people from your multi-faith community who can stay and persist. It's a team sport. Especially now, when hate is so emboldened and the bar for publicly spewing it is so low, there are times that we need to tap out. And then there are other times that we need to persist. And only you know where your lines are. When I was writing my master's thesis, I was assigned a writing partner based on our research areas. I was writing on physical embodiment and disability, and so I was partnered with someone who was writing about bodies as well. He was writing about gay conversion therapy, and he was very much on the wrong side of history. To say that I found this topic morally abhorrent is an understatement. And my job for 6 months was to help this man sharpen his argument. I couldn't do it. I couldn't help him other than by repeatedly pointing out the flaws in his logic and in his morality. And at that point in my life, I'd participated in many years of interfaith work, and I was just beginning training as a facilitator. And I found myself in a place of profound practice. I mean, I tried. There were a lot of deep breaths, a lot of reminders to myself to suspend my judgment, to meet him in his humanity. My cis straight identity allowed me to be somebody who could persist in that space. I could listen to him. I could ask him questions about why he believed what he did, where he was coming from, what created his worldview. I tried to take him really seriously, tried to suspend my judgments of him, enough to be able to know him in the way that he wanted to be known. And I did learn some things that complicated who he was for me. Now, that might sound like an interfaith success, but it was not. It really wasn't. I was 23. I was just learning. I didn't do a great job at being vulnerable to him. I certainly didn't create space for him to be vulnerable with me. As much as I told myself not to judge him, I know he could feel the judgment rolling off of me. If I could go back, I would. I'd be more intentional about asking him about other parts of his identity. I wish I could try again, knowing what it is that I know now. I wish I hadn't been so focused on fixing him and more focused on knowing him as he wanted to be known. And the reason that I wish for this is because I think we both had the potential to be changed. I might have been kinder. might have become more affirming. The big thing that I have learned since then is that pluralism is its own authority and its own power. It's not a power that I aim, and it's not a power that I wield. In fact, it isn't a weapon at all. It's a little bit like water. It finds cracks and it breaks things open. Whenever I'm tempted to insist on my way, I'm trusting in an unreliable power. When I see politicians who use laws or rules to legislate a certain way of being, they are relying on force and they are relying on coercion. As a faithful Christian, I know the end of that story. You can kill God. You can use the power of the state to destroy people and communities, but that is a fantasy of the way real power works. I believe in the power of the Holy Spirit who works in and through all things. The end of the story as I know it is resurrection. The horror of this moment will be overcome by people who persist, who grow in relationship and knowing, who refuse to see others as strangers to be overcome, and instead see them as neighbors who they need to know better. I'm sure you've turned on the news. Our country, our world is at war with itself. One ideological perspective has grabbed the reins of power and is trying everything in its capabilities to recreate the world in its image. Under this regime, immigrants are known as dangerous. Trans folk are polluting, suspect, probably faking their gender presentation. Poverty is a leech on the productive class. As someone who values diversity and inclusion, I find it traumatic to wake up and to turn that on each day. But you know what the antidote is? It's relationship. It's an embrace of pluralism. Really knowing someone who's very different from yourself, not fearing those differences. Not asking you to roll over. I'm not asking you to be abused, and I'm certainly not asking you to give up your convictions. Instead, I'm asking, when you can, to stand in a place of witness to the power of just sticking it out, of not walking away, of building bridges to someone very different from yourself for the sake of that relationship. Relationship is soft power. In this moment, it maybe doesn't feel like enough. To quote one contemporary Christian saint, her name is Rachel Held Evans, the truth is, the church doesn't offer a cure, it doesn't offer a quick fix. The church offers death and resurrection. The church offers the messy, inconvenient, gut-wrenching, never-ending work of healing and reconciliation. Some days, I want the big guns. I want the power. I want the arm twisting. And then I remember that God doesn't show up in that sort of power. Like water, God cracks us open, creating space for transformation. So I'll show up again. I'll try teaching a skill set that I wish everybody had and they just taught it in high school. I'll keep talking about fidelity of relationship, a commitment to coming back time and again, to loving even across boundaries of difference, to the critical suspension of judgment. Those, friends, are our only tools. You can make laws, you can imprison people, but you can't stop them from caring about their neighbors. Pluralism Interfaith dialogue builds the capacity for peace because instead of our neighbors being categories, we get to see them as real people. Maybe that's weak tea. Maybe that's the losing side of the culture war. But then again, I know that the end isn't death. I believe in resurrection. Thanks be to God. Amen.
Spirit, one last time, we'll sing ourselves out.
I guess you stay standing for this part. In my tradition, we give both a charge and a blessing, so I'm going to do that for you today. My charge to you, good people, is to go into the world and cross a boundary, meet someone different from yourself, and show up as the good, kind, and upstanding folks that you are. And now a blessing. In the Jewish and in the Christian tradition, we say these words. May the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord be kind and gracious to you. May the Lord look upon you with favor this day and all days. Amen.